In this video, we'll be taking a look at 4 college basketball games happening on December 18, 2025, and providing you with free team picks and total picks for each one of those games, so 8 picks in total. Welcome back to Cash Out Sports. Let's dive right into it. Oh, and don't forget to subscribe and to click the bell icon to get notified as soon as these videos get released, so that you have more time to plan out your bets as we provide these videos on a daily basis. I can guarantee that you'll have all the important information that you'll need on these 4 college basketball games after fully watching this video. One more thing before we start: if you would like to gain access to our best exclusive sports picks to take your journey to the next level, then check out our Patreon in the link down below, where we offer our best single picks, parlay picks, and much more. Now let's get started. Bradley versus Indiana State. Both teams sit at 7-4, both think they have a real shot to be in the top tier of the league, and both are walking into this one feeling like the non-conference schedule just confirmed what they already believed about themselves. Bradley shows up off 2 absolute stress-free beatdowns, an 84-55 win over Northern Illinois and an 86-53 cruise past North Central from Illinois, the kind of games where the student section is checking the football bowl scores before the under-8 timeout and the walk-ons are already tucking their warm-ups into their socks on the bench. That is usually a sign a team not only handled business, but did it while staying in character. Their identity under this long-running staff has gotten very clear. They want you to feel like every dribble is being watched, every pass is being measured, and every casual cut might get you replaced on the next horn. They pressure the ball just enough to be annoying without gambling themselves out of position, and they are piling up over 10 steals per game, which is way out in front of what a typical Division Y team does. That kind of constant hand in the cookie jar stuff wears on you, especially when it is paired with the boring grown-up things they like on offense. Things like running through multiple options, rejecting early tough shots, and forcing you to guard for most of the clock instead of just the first 8 seconds. It is not sexy, but it wins a lot of Tuesday nights in this league. Indiana State, by contrast, is the team that wants this to feel like your buddy texting you run at the rec in 10 instead of conditioning workout at 6 a.m. Their tempo sits near the top of the national charts. They are always nudging the gas pedal, and Hulman Center has turned into a little house of energy with that 5-0 home record so far. The idea is simple: more possessions, more threes, more chances for that one big 6-minute flurry where the place turns into chaos and the opponent suddenly looks like they just stepped into a snow globe. And honestly, that style is fun. It is the kind of basketball neutrals love, and it has already produced scores like 99 against Eureka and 77 against Southern Indiana. But here is the thing: when the Sycamores have stepped up a level, that style has had a habit of cutting both ways. At places like Duke or Louisiana Tech in past seasons, and even in that tight road finish at Milwaukee this year where they squeaked out 70-68, that freedom has sometimes turned into quick pull-ups, deep threes a step too early, and long rebounds that invite the other team to sprint right back at them. Against a defense as organized as Bradley's, those little moments are not just wasted trips, they are momentum swings. You miss that early clock 3, it takes a wild bounce, and now you are chasing numbers the other way while the crowd is still reacting to the shot that just clanged. Bradley absolutely lives for that kind of sloppiness in a fast game. They do not need every Indiana State possession to be messy, they just need the handful that always show up when the pace is high. A lazy entry pass here, a loose handle near half court there, one of those "I thought you were popping, you thought I was rolling" turnovers. Those become live ball steals, corner threes in rhythm, and layups that just gotta run. In a Valley game, 3 or 4 of those swings can flip the whole story. And unlike a lot of teams that pressure the ball, Bradley is perfectly happy when this thing slows down late and every half-court trip starts to feel like exam week instead of recess. The history between these two has already shown what happens when Bradley gets comfortable with the questions on the test. There was that 118-65 hammering last season in Peoria, and they also survived that 90-89 overtime thriller right here in Terre Haute before that. Indiana State is still absolutely dangerous at home, and that building can wake up in a hurry, but stylistically this matchup leans toward the team that likes structure, likes order, and likes watching an opponent try to solve a puzzle with a shot clock ticking in the background. With guys like Jaquan Johnson, Alex Hebrexy, and A.J. Smith locked into regular roles for Bradley, and Camp Wagner, Ian Scott, and Xavier Hall settled into Indiana State's rotation on the other side, plus no key injuries showing up on the major reports, the main question becomes whose preferred style is more fragile when the other coach starts poking at it. Everything on paper points toward the group that can win even when the game gets choppy, not just when it gets pretty. As our first pick for this matchup, the Bradley Braves to cover the spread as favorites is our full game side pick. Current markets hanging around 145.5 with team totals in the mid-70s for Bradley and low 70s for Indiana State are not some wild fantasy. They are right in line with how both of these offenses usually live. Bradley is averaging roughly 76 points a night, shooting in the mid-40s from the floor, knocking down enough threes to keep you honest, and sitting comfortably above 72% at the stripe. That combination does not scream fireworks on its own, but it does mean that when the game opens up a little, their scoring tends to travel. Indiana State, meanwhile, plays like someone hit the faster slider a couple notches on a video game. They want more trips, more possessions, more chances to see if you can guard them for 40 real minutes when your legs are tired and the building is loud. You can see it in the box scores: 70 on the road in that nail-biter at Milwaukee, 77 at home against Southern Indiana, 99 dropped on Eureka when everything was humming. Those are not flukes. They are exactly what you expect from a fast team that gives its shooters a permanent green light and likes to get into actions early in the clock. Now here is the slightly funny part for such an over-friendly matchup on paper. If you just look at how the totals have actually landed, both teams have leaned to the under so far. Bradley sits at 4 overs to 6 unders, Indiana State at 3 overs to 6 unders, and if you only stared at that line in a betting log, you might think both offenses had been stuck in molasses. In reality, books have been hanging some pretty aggressive numbers on Indiana State games because of the pace, and some early season shooting noise has dragged a few of those contests below the number. It happens every year in November and December. The totals market gets a little high on a fun tempo team, and reality drags the score back toward earth. This matchup, though, has all the pieces of a script where that trend can flip for a night. Bradley's defense creates a ton of steals and live ball chaos, which often leads to quick points and not just good defense. Now walk it up possessions. Indiana State is not shy about pushing after makes or misses, and a team that chases pace is rarely going to stop running just because the other side is dangerous in transition. With both teams coming in healthy, rotations intact, and no major injuries listed for any of the key names we talked about, you are looking at full workloads, full foul counts, and likely a full dose of late-game clock-stopping free throws if this spread stays tight. That alone can turn a 138-type game into something that sneaks toward 150 in the last 2 minutes. If you want a historical nudge, the recent meetings absolutely line up with a higher total. The last 4 clashes have all sailed past 150 combined points, including that 90-89 overtime thriller in Terre Haute, the 95-86 double overtime show the season before, and the 85-77 game that kicked off this little run of scoring between them. Even the 118-65 blowout cleared a big number without needing any drama. When these two see each other across the floor, the tempo tends to breathe a little, the threes fly a little more freely, and the foul count has not exactly been shy. So if we get what the matchup suggests, Indiana State pushing the pace because that is who they are, Bradley happily turning any loose handle into an easy 2 the other way, and both coaches riding their main rotations instead of emptying the bench early, this mid-140s total feels more like a starting point than a ceiling. It might not be pretty on every trip, but possessions add up fast in a game like this, and a few bursts on each side can move that scoreboard in a hurry. As our second pick for this matchup, over the projected total is our full game total pick. Norfolk State versus Grambling. Neutral site hoops in December kind of feel like surprise quizzes from that one professor who actually likes pop tests. You show up in a different gym, unfamiliar rims, weird shooting backdrops, and suddenly the team that is more prepared and more comfortable with who they are usually looks a whole lot better than their record. That is the backdrop here, with Norfolk State coming in at 4-7 and Grambling at 3-6, and those records really do not tell the full story. Norfolk has already worn a couple of heavyweight punches, taking those welcome to the big leagues type beatdowns from national powers that can hang close to triple digits on almost anyone when they feel like pressing the gas. On the surface, that can make a defense look shakier than it actually is. But if you strip out the emotional sting and just focus on how they function against their usual mid-major and low-major peers, you see a group that tends to score more than it allows and that shoots more cleanly from the floor than the opponents they see most often. Grambling, by contrast, has the kind of profile you expect from a team that is still figuring out what works and what does not. They sit on the wrong side of the scoring margin. Their opponents tend to find slightly easier shots, and their own offense often feels like it is working uphill, especially when you scroll through their box scores and see long stretches where points come in slow, choppy bursts instead of steady waves. Here is the thing, both teams sit around a pretty normal tempo, hovering near that national average pace where you are not exactly sprinting, but you are not walking the ball up the floor either. That sort of middle ground rhythm usually turns the game into a test of half-court habits, not just raw energy. Who runs cleaner sets when the first option is taken away? Who gets to their spots without thinking? Who keeps their spacing when the crowd gets loud or the legs get heavy? Norfolk has the advantage of stability there, with a coaching voice that has been around long enough to build a clear identity and a system that players can run in their sleep, even when the venue is different and the schedule has been a little unforgiving. Grambling feels more like a team still sanding down the rough edges, trying to mesh what they want to be with what they can be on a given night, and sometimes that shows in how their offense stalls or how quickly opponents find comfort on the other end. In a near coin flip number on a neutral floor, with a spread that basically says, these two are close enough, you figure it out, leaning toward the side that brings more reliable execution, better underlying efficiency, and fewer wild swings from game to game starts to make a lot of sense, even if it is not flashy. As our first pick for this matchup, the Norfolk State Spartans to cover the spread as favorites is our full game side pick. The total number hanging out there around the low 130s, roughly 132.5, is really the market asking a simple question. Do you trust both of these offenses to show up on the same night for the full 40 minutes? On paper, if you just glance at season scoring averages, it can look like an easy, sure, why not? Norfolk has been living in the mid to high 70s, Grambling around the high 60s, and that quick mental math pushes you toward expecting something that drifts into the 140s. But, and this is important, those averages have been puffed up by a few wild mismatches. Grambling watched Iowa State run the scoreboard into triple digits, dropping one of those, yep, that is a high major playing at home type numbers. Norfolk got caught in those Arizona and Baylor track meets, where possessions pile up, talent gaps show, and suddenly, your season defensive average gets lit on fire in one afternoon. If you set those games aside for a moment and look at what Grambling usually does against similar level opponents, the picture changes. Their offense rarely bursts into the mid-70s against Division I competition, and when it does, it tends to come in very specific spots, like softer matchups or games where pace gets weird. Most nights, they are living in that low 60s to low 70s window, which matches the idea that their scoring efficiency is sitting toward the lower end of the national pack. Norfolk's defense, when it is not being dragged around by those top 10 monsters, actually holds up reasonably well, especially against teams that are not loaded with future pros. They rebound with some toughness, they guard the rim with enough presence to make drivers think twice, and they are comfortable grinding through structured half-court possessions instead of turning everything into a track meet. Let me explain how that connects to the total. Both teams, as we said earlier, are roughly at an average tempo, so you are not counting on 80 possessions each way to bail you out. A number in the low 130s basically assumes something like mid-60s for both sides, which is not crazy, but it does expect Grambling to carry their share against a more physical opponent on a neutral floor. Given how often their offense has sputtered into those long scoring droughts, that is a big ask. This kind of setup often turns into a bruising, possession-by-possession grind, the kind of game where a couple of late empty trips, a few missed free throws, or one long scoring lull ends up mattering more than the highlight plays. It feels much more like a script where Norfolk's defense nudges the pace down and forces Grambling into tougher looks than a back-and-forth shootout where both teams flirt with their best offensive selves at the same time. As our second pick for this matchup, under the projected total is our full game total pick. Drake versus Murray State. Murray, Kentucky on a winter night is not exactly Times Square, but for college hoops fans it might as well be its own little basketball universe. You have the league's track meet outfit playing in front of a crowd that treats December like March, and the visitor is a program that prides itself on slowing people down and making them uncomfortable. It is styles clashing, tempos clashing, and honestly, mindsets clashing a bit too. Murray State has leaned hard into being the team nobody wants to run with. They love early offense, quick decisions, and that first good shot might actually be the best shot mentality. When they get it humming, possessions feel short, the rim looks huge, and the scoreboard starts racing like a slot machine that just hit a bonus. You can almost feel the crowd feeding off each quick trigger three, and the team feeding off the crowd right back. It is not just numbers, it is a whole identity built around playing fast and free and letting their depth breathe. Drake, on the other hand, is more like the veteran poker player at the table. They are not trying to match every raise. They are trying to control the pace of the hand. This group still carries the DNA of a program that has lived off discipline, structure, and half-court execution. They can score, sure, but they do it more through patience, smart spacing, and picking their spots rather than turning every possession into a track event. On defense, they are built to make you feel like every catch is a little more crowded than you want it to be, and every jumper is just a bit tougher than it looked on film. Here's the thing, when you match those two personalities up in this particular building, it is Murray's terms that tend to stick. Playing on the road against this style is not just about athleticism, it is about emotional stamina. Drake has been through a weird non-conference journey already, with neutral floors, long trips, and a couple of high-stress finishes. Now they have to walk into a loud gym where every racer run feels bigger than the last, and they have to do it against a team that is perfectly happy playing at a pace that magnifies every little lapse. If Drake tries to keep this at their preferred tempo, they are asking their offense to live in the half-court against a team that thrives off sudden bursts. That can turn into long stretches where possessions feel heavy, the crowd starts to creep into every miss, and one or two empty trips suddenly become a 7-0 or 9-0 run the other way. If Drake decides to let this thing open up and runs with the racers for long stretches, they step into a game that fits Murray's comfort zone almost perfectly. Either way, they are walking a tightrope. There is also the depth and rhythm factor. Murray can throw wave after wave of guards and wings at you, with different guys capable of getting hot for 5 minutes at a time. That kind of depth is a lot more dangerous in front of a friendly crowd where the bench guys already feel like part of the show. Drake leans more on a few core offensive engines to manufacture good looks. If foul trouble or fatigue hits those key pieces, especially in a game that threatens to become high possession by nature, the Bulldogs are the ones more likely to feel stretched. Mentally, too, this sets up in a way that gently tilts toward the favorite. Murray is coming off the kind of offensive performances that confirm their identity rather than challenge it. They ran with quality teams, scored in bunches, and walked away with some statement-type wins that tell the locker room, yes, this is who we are. Drake's recent experience has been more of a roller coaster, from impressive wins where everything clicked to frustrating nights where the opponent caught fire from deep and the game slipped away at home. Tack on the travel and the adjustment into league play, and the Bulldogs have to solve several things at once. So while Drake is capable, experienced, and well coached enough to hang around for stretches, the matchup, the venue, and the way these teams prefer to live possession by possession all point in one clear direction if this script holds. Over the course of 40 minutes, that tends to show up on the scoreboard as real separation more often than not. As our first pick for this matchup, the Murray State Racers to cover the spread as favorites is our full game side pick. You glance at how Murray likes to play, you remember the fireworks from some of their recent scores, you remember them raining threes on good opponents, and your brain immediately goes, okay, this is going to be wild. It is easy to see all that and feel like anything under 160 points is almost conservative. But here is the twist. Games that look like automatic shootouts do not always behave that way for 40 minutes. Murray wants pace, sure, and they are very comfortable playing in the 90s. Yet high totals are not only about one team's ceiling, they are about the combined stability of both offenses, the officiating crew, the rhythm of the game, and how the final 5 minutes are managed. If any one of those gears slips, a total this lofty suddenly starts to feel very high in hindsight. Think about the kind of effort Drake usually brings defensively when they are locked in. Their whole personality is built on shrinking space and forcing you to live with tougher shots. They are good at running shooters off the line and turning clean catch and shoot looks into off-balance, late clock jumpers. They are also very comfortable grinding a half-court possession down to the last few seconds and trusting that their structure will get them something serviceable on offense. That kind of approach does not kill the pace, but it absolutely trims a few possessions off what the game could be at its most chaotic. On the other side, Murray's offense is explosive but not automatic. A team that leans on threes and quick decisions has built-in volatility. When the threes fall, it looks like a rec league game where nobody can miss. When they hit a cold stretch, the same style can produce a couple of empty trips in a row, and those stretches matter a lot more when the total is set in the clouds. A 3-minute drought in a game totaled in the 150s is a nuisance. In a game totaled near 160, it can be the difference between cruising over and never truly catching back up to the number. There is also the whistle factor. A game like this can go one of two ways. If the officials call it tight, you get more whistles, more free throws, and more stoppages, which can inflate scoring even if the shooting is only decent. But if the crew lets physical perimeter defense and some contact at the rim go, you can end up with long stretches of live ball action where players are actually more tired, legs get heavier, and those quick threes come up a touch short. Viewers see the pace and think points, but pace without free throws and without elite shot making across both teams does not always reach the absolute top of the scoreboard. Endgame strategy matters, too. For a total this high, you almost need the perfect cocktail. You want a competitive score, enough fouling late, and both teams still hunting points right to the buzzer. If one side builds a comfortable cushion, coaches get more conservative, benches check in, and possessions suddenly become longer and less urgent. That kind of fourth quarter can quietly strangle what looked like a rocket ship box score in the first half. So even with the pace, the shooting talent, and the offensive upside on both benches, this number asks a lot. It asks for extended hot stretches, limited foul trouble to key scorers, and defensive schemes that crack early and never quite recover. Given how Drake usually treats defense as non-negotiable and how a high-octane team like Murray can still run into pockets of resistance and cold shooting, the path where this game feels fun, fast, and still sneaks in under such a large total is very easy to imagine. As our second pick for this matchup, under the projected total is our full game total pick. Illinois State versus Southern Illinois. Carbondale on a Thursday night feels like classic Missouri Valley basketball, right? You get that small-town arena energy, the band blaring, and two teams that know each other a little too well for anyone to feel comfortable laying more than a bucket. On the surface, Southern Illinois as a short home favorite makes total sense because the Salukis have name recognition, a loud building, and that reputation for being a tough out at Bandera Center. But when you zoom out from the logo on the jersey and look at how these two have actually been playing, the picture shifts a bit. Illinois State rolls in at 8-3, Southern Illinois sits at 6-5, and most of the predictive numbers quietly lean toward the Redbirds as the more complete team so far, 8-3 even if the market still treats them like the little brother in this matchup. The Redbirds have put together consistent scoring margins, they handle physical games without flinching, and their style travels well because it is built on defense, shot selection, and not panicking when the crowd gets loud. Southern Illinois, on the other hand, has that hot and cold personality where they can look brilliant for 5 minutes, then spend the next 4 staring at the rim like it is covered in plastic wrap, which is fun for neutral fans but less fun when you are asking them to win by margin. In a game that profiles as more of a coin flip than the line suggests, getting the healthier, statistically sturdier group plus points in a conference opener feels less like a bold upset call and more like taking the side that has quietly earned respect all through non-conference play. As our first pick for this matchup, Illinois State to cover the spread as underdogs is our full game side pick. The total number has been set in that low 150s window, which tells you odds makers are expecting a fairly up-tempo, high-scoring game, especially with both offenses showing they can comfortably get into the 80s on a good night. That sounds reasonable until you remember this is the Missouri Valley in December, with two teams opening league play and knowing every possession is going to be clipped and rewatched by coaches for the next week. Conference openers have a habit of tightening up, and both of these teams have enough pride on the defensive end that they are not just going to trade layups and threes for 40 minutes like it is an exhibition. Illinois State is very comfortable turning games into controlled half-court battles, forcing opponents to run offense late into the shot clock, and Southern Illinois, even when they speed things up, still prefers structured sets over pure chaos. Add in strong rebounding on both sides, which limits easy second chance points, plus the usual early game nerves, and you have the recipe for those stretches where 3 or 4 possessions in a row end with long, frustrated walks back on defense instead of fireworks. Sure, there will be many runs, there always are, but in a game that should feel like a grind, with coaches milking timeouts and valuing every trip, the math of pace plus shot quality points more toward a score that lands below what the market is asking these two to reach. As our second pick for this matchup, under the projected total is our full game total pick. That's all for now, so if you have any other games you would like reviewed, then leave a comment down below with the game you would like analyzed, subscribe to our channel, leave a like on this video, and we'll get to it as soon as we possibly can. We would also love to hear your opinion on the picks presented to you in this video, whether you agree or disagree with them, so leave a comment down below and do let us know.